Alloa Street in Waratah West looked like a war zone, residents cleaning up after the flash flood.
Well, I come out about 10 to 7 and I looked up the hill and there was water rushing down the hill. Anyway, after 5 minutes we were swamped with water.
The water poured down the hill like a river, hundreds of thousands of litres en route for 2 homes. There was little time to protect property or goods, the water measuring up to half a metre deep.
I was in bed and I heard this water, jumped up and had a look and run and grabbed my keys and moved all the cars out of the garage, water running down the hill.
An old cast iron 600mm main broke about 100 metres above the houses. It was thought the spill came from the Waratah West Reservoir, but that was later discounted. After cutting the mains flow, Hunter Water Corporation workers found the break hidden away in thick scrub.
So when she put the water out.
The Hunter Water Corporation says it won't pay any compensation for the flood, a spokesperson saying that could only be covered through private insurance.
Developer Greg Moylan first raised his claims on NBN News last week, criticising Councillor Hall over her push to take the Penny Beach issue to the Independent Commission Against Corruption.
It's nothing more than political grandstanding. We know that she's after as much exposure as she can get to assist her progress into the state seat of Swansea, and there's no question in my mind that this is the game that she's playing.
Today, Mr Moylan took his point one step further, publishing this advertisement in the Newcastle Herald. The ad seeks to explain how the council approved development of a 50-metre strip of land zoned environmental protection. It goes on to say all councillors were fully aware of the situation when they gave approval. He says Councillor Hall's motives in calling for an independent investigation are suspicious. The ad ends with, her actions and comments appear insincere. She has dangerously undermined staff morale while elevating her own public profile. Councillor Hall believes Mr Moylan is trying to intimidate her. She says her motives are genuine and she won't be stopped.
I think it's most unfortunate that Mr Moylan needs to resort to attacking myself on a personal level rather than answering the concerns of the community.
The Penny Beach issue, including whether it should go to the ICAC, will be discussed by Council in confidence tonight because of a move by the Caves Beach Progress Association to have the matter sorted out in the Land and Environment Court. The residents have instigated legal proceedings against Council, questioning the validity of the subdivision approval. Jodie McKay, NBN News. State member for Lake Macquarie, Jeff Hunter, claims the West Lakes area is drastically short of police. Today, he and the region's other Labor politicians talked with patrol commanders and Chief Superintendent Heinz Moller about what they see as problems in the district. Mr Hunter believes Toronto in particular is understaffed, while officers at Morisset are working in substandard conditions.
And I've had numerous complaints from neighbourhood watch groups, from progress associations and individual community members, and they just believe that the response times are not good enough.
Police Chief Heinz Moller says Toronto does have enough officers, while work on new buildings for Morisset will start soon.
Yes, there is a problem with the space at Morisset. The police need extra room, especially for privacy issues when they're interviewing members of the public. And we have a program in place to give them a new demountable building.
Chief Superintendent Moller denies Mr Hunter's claims the district as a whole is underfunded. He says a new station at Waratah will open on Friday. Already, demountable buildings are in place in Coolaman Road for the station, which will house 26 officers.
With the state government election looming, the Hunter Coast Care Forum is aiming to become a powerful lobby group. It represents around 25 organisations who fear a rapid growth in the Hunters' population will place an enormous strain on our coastline.
Our concern is that the coast of the Hunter from Port Stephens to Lake Macquarie is basically being treated as a strip of real estate. Now, it isn't just real estate, it's our water supply, it's our fishing industry, it's our recreational space, and of course it's the future of the tourism industry.
The recently released Coastal Urban Settlement Strategy has been fiercely opposed by environmentalists, critics claiming policies are in the interests of developers.
The strategy is driven by the need to build more houses on the coast, not to preserve the coastal environment for posterity.
A public rally will be held at City Hall tomorrow night. Organisers say only a united front will help protect a valuable resource.
Sydney listens to us when we make a lot of noise and when we're united amongst ourselves. And what we would hope would come out of this coastal crisis public meeting is a very strong Hunter view that Sydney will be forced to listen to.
Up by 18 points against Adelaide on Friday night, the Falcons appeared to be on track to repeating North Melbourne's feat of winning both legs of the infamous Doomsday Double road trip. But as was the case a week earlier, Newcastle squandered a handy lead, succumbing to Adelaide 90-85. The loss providing the motivation for Saturday's upset victory over Perth, their third consecutive win over the Wildcats in the league.
We knew we had the win against Adelaide, we let it slip, but I think the guys obviously found that was enough motivation for them to come out Saturday night and perform really well and try and split the weekend.
One of the more spectacular highlights from the weekend was Jensen's effort on quarter time against the 36ers to put the Falcons within a point.
I had my eyes shut. No, it's just, coming down towards the end of the first quarter, you've got to chuck up a shot wherever you've got the ball. It's kind of lucky that it went in. I wouldn't back myself all the time against a shot like that. Just a lucky shot.
The Falcons got through the weekend injury-free and are now clear of Illawarra and the Gold Coast, but will play an exhibition match against a visiting South Korean team at Broadmeadow tomorrow night in preparation for their match against the Rollers.
Dementia affects 1 in 8 Australian adults. It's a disease of the brain which targets mainly the elderly, but has been known to affect people as young as 30. Sufferers of Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia, sometimes wonder if they're confused or frightened. Most of the time they try to hide, and even if their name is called, they won't come. To search for an Alzheimer's sufferer is time-consuming and expensive, and for relatives, it's a nervous wait until they're found. Today, the Alzheimer Carers Group handed over a device which will hopefully make finding sufferers much easier. It's a tracking system which works through radio waves. The sufferer wears a neck or body transmitter, and if they disappear, then police can tune into their individual frequency to find them.
We've had 2 instances in the last 3 years in Charlestown where if this particular equipment had have been available at the time, in one instance we would have certainly found the person, I'm sure, alive, and in the other instance we would have certainly saved a great deal of time and money.
The $2,000 device can keep tabs on 500 sufferers. It's up to nursing homes and relatives to buy the transmitters, which are worth around $180. For carers, though, it's worth the effort.
Things will happen much quicker. The police will actually have the record of the person who is wearing the token to start off with, and it makes a simple job then of just following the sounds to where that particular person is hiding.
familiar story, the potential of research pioneered in Australia is recognised by overseas companies and the patent bought before Australian investors can be raised. But that won't happen with the Jamison cell. The university today launched its own company, JetFloat, to market the invention itself.
The company we are launching today specialises in the clean-up of industrial wastewaters so that they can be returned to the environment in a benign state.
It'll prevent the product going overseas and being sold back to us. This will be an Australian product sold by Australia, lifting Australia's profile in the world and showing that not only do we have high environmental standards, we can help other people achieve those standards too.
The device uses flotation to separate and purify industrial wastewater. Developed 8 years ago, the engineering faculty of the university has refined the process to a point where it's now ready to tackle overseas markets. Far from being the only group to recognise its potential, North Coast dairy company Norco earlier this year installed the technology in its Lismore factory. Since then, the JetFloat company has won $1 million worth of contracts. The cell can also be used to purify coal, mineral and oil wastewater.
It has all the elements we want to foster: imagination, foresight, patience, commitment, determination and the capacity to apply and commercialise research.
It's products like these that supporters of the Australian Food Network cooperatives say could fill potentially lucrative niches in Asian supermarkets. Successful in their home market, the 11 companies involved employ more than 700 people in the region and pour $200 million into the local economy, a figure that could double, even triple if the network venture works.
It would be impossible for the small companies to do it on their own. Doing it with each other makes it very possible and makes the outcome of success very real.
Flagging a distinctive logo, it's clever marketing strategies and well-researched information that will be the key to success. Unlike other networks that have been set up, this one has the backing of the Food Technology and Dietetics faculty of the University of Newcastle. As well as the latest developments in the field, businesses will have access to library and research facilities equal to or better than those of much larger companies. But the relationship is mutually beneficial.
Students have access to confidential information, formulations and processes, and so their research has a real practical focus.
Unable to negotiate a deal with the proposed buyer of the club's ground and facilities, the Breakers board met last night and decided to stand down, appointing Alex McIntosh of KPMG Pete Marwick as administrator. Mr McIntosh will continue dealing with two prospective buyers, revealed today as the New South Wales Soccer Federation and an unnamed individual.
It does need a professional person like the administrator to wrap this deal up. And he last night, after talking with the board, feels that the operations does have a future.
Mr McIntosh will also meet with the club's unsecured creditors on Monday to announce his intentions, and then again in early October with a plan to rid the club of its debt, but it must be ratified by a majority of the unsecured creditors.
And hopefully that offer will be accepted by the unsecured creditors.
And if it's not?
Well, like we were at this time yesterday, we had two options. Either we put it in place and are successful, or we close the doors.
The Australian Soccer Federation today supported the appointment of the administrator and reiterated the Breakers will be given every possible chance to prove their viability. The team plays its first game on Thursday against Bankstown in the 6th round of the Waratah Cup. The appointment of a coach now not expected till the end of the month.
Bob Hatton's decision to leave the job of coordinating the region's 6,000 bushfire volunteers is a result of his department's recent shake-up. Opinions differed when it came to the appointment of Wyong's Fire Control Officer Graham Swain as the Hunter's new Deputy Regional Coordinator.
In view of a widening gap between the senior executive officers and myself, I've decided that I should walk away and let them do what they think is necessary in the Hunter.
In support of their chief of 22 years, volunteers threatened to withdraw their services if the appointment went ahead. Despite a heated crisis meeting, Commissioner Phil Coperberg refused to back down from his decision.
I'm fully aware that he had to do the job. I respect his decision in doing it. He stood his ground like I've stood mine.
Mr Hatton will leave his Cessnock-based job on Friday, but plans to become a volunteer firefighter, enabling him to finish a number of projects such as establishing a new training area at Killingworth. While questioning the level of support the new deputy will have, Mr Hatton predicts a volatile fire season ahead.
And I'm very concerned about the Hunter region, and I believe the Commissioner is concerned of the Hunter and the North Coast. So, I have grave doubts whether we can get out of this season without some losses.
This year's Freedom from Hunger appeal has special urgency.
Given that this is the International Year of the Family, we are focusing particularly on women and children who are dying of starvation in some parts of the world.
Since merging with Community Aid Abroad 2 years ago, the International Welfare Organisation is Australia's largest. Money from this weekend's door knock will be used to fund a number of projects, including providing clean water to Vietnam's poorest villages and helping millions of people caught in civil strife in countries such as Ethiopia and Rwanda.
In some areas there's hope, things are changing. In some areas, of course, it still continues, and part of it is to do with structures, human economic structures and greed.
With the drought starting to take its toll in Australia, organisers are hoping people will also remember the devastating scope of famine in other countries.
And there is a concern, obviously, for people here as well, in terms of the drought conditions and people suffering from poverty. But poverty is a global concern, and we are one human race, ultimately. And wherever there is suffering and need, you and I as human beings have got to respond to that.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
It's an ambitious plan. Down to Earth hopes that by donating 5 cents from each product sold from its range, $500,000 will be raised every year to be donated to school and community groups for environmental repair projects.
Australians are very environmentally concerned, and the Down to Earth Foundation is there to provide support and funding for that concern.
The announcement coincides with Down to Earth's recent $2 million campaign to encourage shoppers to buy biodegradable and natural cleaning products. An advisory board comprising of members from the CSIRO, universities, local councils, environment and business groups will examine the applications. The inaugural award went to Clean Up Australia for its schools program called The Rubbish Report.
From now on, you don't just drop a wrapper, you think about what it's going to do and how it's going to affect the environment. So we used to just throw stuff down the drain, but now that I've seen what's happening, I'm more aware that whatever we throw down the sink will end up in the creek or in the beaches.
The deadline for applications is the 30th of October and the 30th of April each year. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
As one of Australia's major exports, coal is of critical interest to the national economy. Today, the Australian Coal Association released a special report on the industry's future, responding to the continuing controversy over prices in the Japanese market. Prices have dropped by more than 40% since 1982. The association chief, Bob Humphries, says he doesn't fear Japanese negotiators.
Well, they're tough, they're hard, they're very capable people, but I believe Australians are equally tough and capable.
The unions argue the Australian negotiators should act as a unified team, not selling out on prices and in the long-term jobs. Former Federal Shipping and Transport Minister Peter Morris says the coal companies are being pushed around by the Japanese.
Whether that's intended or not, they do. There's no doubt about that. And listening to this morning's presentation, the theme of that was that we are just players in a large market, and if we push our major customer too hard, he'll leave us.
The Coal Association claims the Japanese already pay the best price of all our major markets. And if Australian exporters were to push too hard for a better deal, the Japanese could simply transfer to other suppliers or other fuels such as uranium or natural gas. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
In Belmont Court this morning were two girls aged 14 and 15, both from the Central Coast, and a 17-year-old alleged driver of the vehicle from Umina. The youth, who has a learner's permit, was charged with numerous offences, including stealing this car, driving in a manner dangerous and negligent driving. The girls with car stealing. The three and another 18-year-old girl were arrested in the early hours of this morning when the stolen car collided with this police vehicle south of Belmont. They were noticed by police just after 2 o'clock. During a chase, two tyres on the stolen car blew when it hit a roundabout. However, the car stopped only when it crashed into the police car. No one was injured. The youth was refused bail or will reappear in Warramai Children's Court on Monday.
Today's church service at St Joseph's was different to any other previously held there. The 25 Koori students who attend the school performed historic dances around a campfire. Aboriginal Education Officer Lynn Davis says it was an enjoyable way to display aspects of Australia's history.
It's all part of Aboriginal spirituality that we have a mass outside like this, you know, and I think it's good for the non-Aboriginal children too to learn about our culture, you know, the Aboriginal culture.
All students walked through the Dreamtime campfire, staged to resemble the traditional smoking ceremony. Mrs Davis says more of these masses will be held in the school grounds.
At 28 years old, Terry Dozier describes himself as a spring chicken. Maybe not a chicken, but this Falcon will play his 100th NBL game when Newcastle takes on the Gold Coast on Saturday night.
Oh, I'm pretty excited about it, knowing that this game could cement us in the playoffs. So rather it's 100 or 1, get it in the playoffs and get the win, I'll be very happy.
At training today, Terry's wife Kim was keeping an eye on the veteran. Terry has had 4 years in Australia, his first year with Geelong, the rest in Newcastle. The Falcons are on a roll after a strong away win against Perth. They should grab a final 8 spot if they play to their ability in the last 4 games.
We still have to play Gold Coast and Illawarra, the two threatening teams in our 8th position, so we feel very confident that we should get there.
At about 12:10, police were called to the scene of this accident.
It appears that an elderly female driver was driving south on Manning Point Road, crossed to the incorrect side of the roadway and struck a tree.
A post-mortem examination will be carried out to try and determine the cause of the accident. There were no skid marks at the scene. Police say it is possible the woman may have suffered a heart attack at the wheel. Scientific police are investigating. Amanda Bolger, NBN News. Aspiring Robin Hoods from as far away as the northwestern Hunter are traipsing around the Coffs Harbour bush, putting their field archery skills to the test.
We actually follow a course through the bush and we shoot at our targets from what we call shooting pegs out there at unknown distances. It's a fair sort of a challenge.
The course offers a range of targets, including feral buffalo, pigs and goats of the cardboard kind. Competitors of all ages have stepped in to try for the bullseye, some with a distance advantage, others the experience factor. Regardless of age or experience or even skill, organisers say archery is a sport that can become an enjoyable family affair.
Basically, what all this comes down to is a bit of bush skill, a bit of fun. We have some other novelty events for the kids to keep them occupied because it is very, very much a family sport these days.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News. The lightning bolt hit power lines at the transmitter site at about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon.
We suffered major lightning hit about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, on Friday afternoon, and it took out just about everything that was connected to copper, including transmitters, the communications receivers, virtually put the whole site off the air.
The force of the strike ripped some of the equipment off the wall. The damage bill has been estimated at up to $100,000. Technicians worked frantically to rectify the problem. They were back on air by around 12 o'clock last night. At the moment, the site is operating at minimal capacity.
We're running bare bones at the moment. Most of the site users here are, and there'll be a lot of rebuilding of the backup equipment that's all been damaged. Quite a few chips will be replaced and things like that, and I predict within a couple of weeks we should be back to normal operating.
Gary Harley's pick, Tristalove, trained by Bart Cummings, returned 350 and 160. Derby winner Redding was second and Primacy third. To Rose Hill, where Century Rain made it back-to-back wins, the 8-year-olds first over 2,000 metres. Century Rain returns 17.60 and 4.50, Anything's Possible 1.80 and Oppressor $2.90.
The group is Melbourne-based band Cantagus on a tour of country areas of New South Wales and Queensland. They four play a wide range of ancient design instruments apart from the oud, viol, ganassi and darabaka heard here, and they are all handmade in Australia.
And they just are quite different from modern instruments today, being acoustic instruments and gut strings largely. It's really quite a different world.
While written music from Europe, the Middle East and Asia for the medieval period is hard to come by, there are sources, particularly the Anderson collection in the University of Armidale. And Zena says there's interest in the material, judging by the number of CDs the group sells.
because it's something different, and it's exciting, and we're able to be very creative with the little bit of material that we have still.
The performance in St John's at Taree tonight is a fundraiser for EnviroFair. Afterwards, the group moves on to Armidale, eventually finishing its tour in Rockhampton.
Day 2 of Newcastle's Spring Carnival, and after a crowd of just under 5,000 at yesterday's Cameron meeting, Cup Day lured another big on-course gathering. $3.5 million was bet off course yesterday, while $500,000 changed hands on course. Punters today keen to recoup after the bookies cheered home plenty of long shots, including Cameron winner Social Rule at 66-1. Unlike yesterday, there was a clear favourite. Gold Coast galloper Umpala, solid in the market. Punters sending it out at 3-1, ahead of Victorian Noisy Pier at 5s. But with 600 to go in the Cup, they had to run down the pilot, Pleasant Conquest. Following the race, trainer John Wallace was full of praise for the ride of Chris Muntz. And with Umpala among the lightweight first acceptances for the Melbourne and Caulfield Cups, the 6-year-old will now try to emulate the feats of Hyperno and Gurners Lane, who achieved the Newcastle-Melbourne Cups double.
He'll run in the Colin Stephen, I think it's Saturday week, and then on to the Metropolitan.
Right, any plans to go further south?
Yeah, well, I've paid up the first 2 acceptance for the Caulfield and Melbourne Cup, and, you know, if everything goes all right, he'll be down there.
Umpala returned $3.20 for the win and $1.60 the place, while there was a triple dead heat for third. The best value trifecta, including Umpala and Striking Gold, with Pleasant Conquest paying $505.90.
NBN